It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo. So I don't know what's going on. My computer decided to update like randomly right as I was going live. And then my wife came home and she took the dog from me, who was sleeping peacefully on my floor, like really peacefully down here. And she decided to take him out into the living room and fill his little Kong, which is like a little chewing thing, with warm peanut butter. Okay, which is cool because, you know, it gives the dog something to do. But don't ever put warm peanut butter in a Kong that you're going to give to your dog. Okay, because I went out there to go do something and my dog is covered in peanut butter. Mind you, he's currently sitting in my lap covered in peanut butter. Therefore, I am covered in peanut butter and he smells like peanut butter, but he's happy. So that's a plus. You only put cold peanut butter in a Kong, not warm peanut butter, because it gets everywhere. This little guy is covered in peanut butter right now. Yeah. Smells like peanut butter and all that. Buddy's my little buddy right here. This is my buddy Luke. So he's super chill. All right, he's going to go off to my daughter. And I am going to do a stream now. So now it's been fun with the little guy. He's super cool little dude. And all kinds of fun ups and downs. And it's like having a baby again. It really is, because you're up 2 times a night, sometimes 3 times a night to take him to the bathroom, you know, all that good stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely a fun one. For the million people that are going to ask, he is a silver Labrador Retriever. So, it's that whatever color. They do something in the breeding or something like that. I don't know, some voodoo magic stuff. I guess there's a bunch of controversy about those too, but whatever, dude. He's a cool dog. You know, it is what it is. So, I hope you guys are all doing well. We got all kinds of cool stuff to talk about tonight. Got lots of people in the chat right now. There's a lot of people in here. Do me a favor, if you guys are in here, do me a favor and smash the like button. Looks like currently right now we have about 120 people. We only have 33 likes. Please smash the like button. Help YouTube to recognize that I'm actually here and doing something. Their numbers and things are all kind of wonky these days. So anything we can do will help out the stream. I really appreciate it. Okay. As usual, I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. If you guys have questions and things that you want me to address, do me a favor and throw them in caps lock in the chat, and that'll help me to see them. I can't always get to everything, guys. There's a lot of stuff going on in these streams. It's really hard to get to it all. So do me a favor, and if I miss something, if I don't answer your question, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. So today I got off work a little bit early. I shouldn't say a bit early. I started at 4 in the morning, so I worked a normal day, but I got off earlier than usual, right? So I was in here going through, and what I usually do is if I miss questions, I'll go through and I'll find them, and then I'll throw them into the stuff for the next week, you know? And sometimes you guys send me, you know, questions that I have to address at the moment. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends, okay? So let's see what else we got in here. Let me see. All right. So I want to start off because I've got this question like 2 times last week. Okay. So I want to give a basic introduction about myself. Many of you guys have probably been watching the stream for quite a while. You probably know me. Okay. But obviously my name is Chris. I am an HVACR service technician. I co-own a small business here in Southern California with my father. And I actually started working for my father as a kid, and then now we run the business together, okay? I started making these YouTube videos as like a training method or training aid for my own employees. I've said this a bunch of times. I made some mistakes, and I lost 3. I forget. I've told this so many times. I already forget how many it was. It was 3 or 4 employees at the same time. I think it was 3. Maybe it was 4. I don't know. But it was good 9 years, or no, not 9 years ago. But anyways, I started making these videos as like a training aid because I found myself having to hire experienced technicians that just weren't experienced in the way that I do things or the way that we run our business. So I started making these videos as a, you know, instead of spending 2 hours in the shop in the morning telling stories, you know, get to show them on video. Never really planned on making them public, but here we are now. I decided to do it, and, you know, much apprehension, but it's been amazing, the support that I get from you guys. Okay, so thank you so very much. So I started working for my dad when I was a little kid. I mean, I still run into people these days. I have kitchen staff and managers of restaurants and stuff that remember me when I was a little kid sitting on my dad's bucket. I used to hold his flashlight and not very well. If any of you guys know what I'm talking about, my dad used to have a 4-cell D or 4D cell Maglite, right? So it held 4D batteries. And as a little kid, if you can picture how heavy that is and how cool as a 5-6-year-old it is to see that light go all over the place. But it wasn't cool for my dad because I can remember him saying, "God damn it, Christopher, hold that light straight. I'm trying to work here," you know? And it's like, and here I am, oh, yeah, I'm interested. Look, there's something, you know? I was just like a little kid getting all interested in it. Off and on, worked with my dad. He used to pick me up because my parents were separated. He used to pick me up from my mom's house after school, and then we would run a few calls on the way to his house. And then we would go home, and, you know, I just kind of grew up doing that kind of stuff, learning a lot of stuff from my dad. I learned everything from my dad. Everything that I am today is because of my dad. Now, he didn't necessarily teach me all the knowledge, but he gave me the tools to find the knowledge, okay? And that's a really important thing. So, hello to everybody in the chat. I see you guys. I'm just not paying attention to it right now because I'm on a tangent, okay? So, you know, working with my dad, I used to work with some of his employees, and we used to work the summer times because obviously when I was out of school, I'd go to work full time. There was probably some labor laws being violated, but I can remember in junior high working the summers with some of the employees of my dad's, and I was always doing the grunt work. I would change filters on the roof, hose off condensers, change swamp cooler pads, change belts. That's what I always used to do. So I was always upstairs. I hated it. I absolutely hated it, but I was making $20 a day, right? And as a 12-year-old, or what is that now? Probably not even, yeah, maybe like 11, 12-year-old, as an 11 or 12-year-old, making $20 a day, and at the end of the summer, having a couple $100, that was a really cool thing. It was awesome, right? Flash forward to now, like, could you imagine being paid $20 a day, right? I know some of you guys older than me probably remember some weird things like that, and it's pretty cool. It was a learning experience. But what was interesting was because I was working on the roof all the time in Southern California heat, 115, sometimes 120 degree days, right? That was extreme, but usually 115, 110. I hated it. I absolutely hated it at that stage in my life because I was doing all the horrible stuff, right? I wasn't really retaining any fundamentals or anything, but it was kind of like go up on the roof, change the swamp cooler pads, drain the swamp cooler, blow the drains out, that kind of stuff, right? So I told my dad, you know, no hard feelings, but I was like, Dad, I don't like doing this. I don't want to do this anymore, okay? So a couple years through high school, working odd jobs. My first job was at a sandwich shop. My second job was at Carl's Jr., the hamburger place. I was the drive-through guy, right? Welcome to Carl's Jr. Would you like to try our guacamole bacon cheeseburger today? See, the guacamole bacon cheeseburger had just come out when I was working at Carl's Jr. And what was it? Would you like to go big on that, right? Because go big was their thing. I used to, the manager of the Carl's Jr. that I used to work at would make us change the stickers on the back of the cookies because you had an expiration date on the back of the cookies, right? And so you'd have to peel off the sticker and put on a new sticker because they weren't going to throw away cookies, okay? They had to replace them. Now, of course, Carl's Jr., that was a sole manager. That wasn't Carl's Jr. doing that. I'm got to cover my bases here. That wasn't them. It was a manager that was doing things incorrectly, right? Got to cover it all. But, went to work for a body shop out of high school, working on cars. And then while I was in high school, I was taking auto shop class, or body shop, auto collision, actually. So that was kind of cool because my senior year in high school, I actually never even went to school half the time because I had all my classes taken care of, but the school wouldn't let me like go for just 2 classes. So they made me fill the spots. So I filled them with auto collision repetitively over and over, right? So I had like 3 periods of auto collision. And because I worked at a body shop after school, my teacher would just sign me off. So half the time I wouldn't even go to school. I would just go to work because it was like, whatever, you know, money. That lasted until about a year after high school, and I came to work for my dad full time. I decided, you know what? I don't want to work on cars anymore. I want to do this. So in 2002, the beginning of the year, I came to work doing this, and here we are now. It's been a roller coaster. I've made lots of mistakes. I've learned everything, you know, based off of the skills that my dad gave me. I made, you know, broke a lot of stuff. I fixed a lot of stuff. And you know, someone had made a comment, and I wanted to address this. And this was a very nice comment. And don't take this the wrong way, the guy that sent this comment. But he sent me an email today, and he says he's seen a few times, or he said jokingly, it probably was sarcasm, but he said, I'm a refrigeration god, okay? And again, I appreciate the compliment, okay? But I am not a refrigeration god, okay? I am just a normal guy that likes to look into things and likes to try to figure things out. I have made a lot of mistakes, and I know there are many other people much smarter than I, okay? I know that there's a lot of you guys out there that do this. that might be a little bit nervous, I encourage you guys, okay? Pick up a camera and start filming it if you can, okay? Because there's limitations to all that stuff. But anyways, that's me. That's who I am. I'm just a normal dude that likes to take videos and put them on the internet, okay? All right. So I'm going to take a look at the chat real quick, and then we're going to go through some things that I have on my list. So does auto body paint smell? Yeah. Smells horrible. Let's see what else. Yes, there's still so much to learn. I'm always learning. Primetime said, we are not able to learn everything. There's still so much to learn. And that's the cool thing about this industry, guys. It's really interesting because it's not like you're just working on the same thing every day. Now, granted, there might be some times where it seems repetitive, but technology is always changing. There's new flavors of refrigerant, it seems like weekly, right? There's new different things coming out, new technology, new rules, new regulations, new stuff. And it means that we have to constantly evolve, right? If you're a good HVACR service technician and you know your stuff and you can fix things, you will be employed for life, okay? Now, if you're a jerk or you're a punk or you don't do things right, then of course you might lose your job. But if you are a good technician with skills, you have a career for life. HVACR, right? For those that are watching right now, HVACR, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration is a great trade, okay? There's all different facets of the trade that we can go into. We can do restaurant service like I do. I specialize in restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning, okay? You can go heavy industrial, working on ammonia systems and giant industrial air conditioning systems. You can go commercial refrigeration, working on supermarkets. Rack systems, parallel rack systems, all kinds of cool stuff, right? You can go strictly air conditioning, residential air conditioning. You can get into all different sectors. And with each of those things that I named, there's little niches in every one of those too, okay? Are you a person that is afraid of heights? There's things you can do in this trade if you're afraid of heights, okay? Yeah, you're going to be limited, but there's things you can do. You can get an institution type job, you know? Are you a people person? Well, you can get a front-end service business, or you can go work for a front-end operator or company, right? Where you're actually dealing with customers. You can go on the commercial side where you don't deal with customers as much. You can go residential. This is a great trade. It will provide for you and your family if you are a competent technician that understands that you always have to keep learning, okay? We all just have to keep learning. I was just having a conversation with my buddy Brett Wetzel from the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. He called me just before, and we were just talking about different things, like different ideas, and just talking about problems and things that are happening. And it's cool because there's a camaraderie that happens in this trade once you get to notice people, right? So it's really, really cool. If you guys haven't already, go check out the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. You can find it on all the different app stores where you can find podcasts. Brett Wetzel, Kevin Compass, they do rack refrigeration. They do supermarket refrigeration. And it's really, really cool because they found something that they can share their knowledge on, right? A platform, and they're doing great with it. There's a bunch of different people out here. We got my buddies on the HVAC Overtime channel with myself, Adam, Joe, and Bill. We all have different YouTube channels. Some of us post regularly. Some of us hasn't posted in a while. Bill's been posting. It's been a while, but he started posting again. You guys should check that out too, okay? There's lots of great content on YouTube. Understand something though, right? There's nobody out there saying you're a good service technician, therefore you can make videos, right? There's nobody saying you're a bad service technician, therefore you can't make videos. So keep that in mind, right? There is some bad information out there, but you can usually figure out who that is just by going to the comments sections, right? If there's no comments on their videos, they're deleting them for a reason, okay? But you can usually watch and you could say, this doesn't quite seem right, okay? There's lots of great content on YouTube and we need more. So I encourage everybody out there, if you guys have an interest in it, find a space, start posting stuff. Understand you're not going to explode with viewers and all that different stuff. But hey, you know what? Don't take this the wrong way. I'm not flexing or anything, and maybe there's a better way I can say this, but I never planned on any of this stuff. I never planned on a platform turning into what it has. I just started making videos for my employees. I shared them, and it slowly grew and grew and grew. And it took time to get to the point that I'm at right now. And there's people that are well beyond me too, right? There's a lot of amazing content out there. And there's a lot of people that like to consume that content. So check it out, support the other channels. If you guys watch other channels, leave them comments, leave them feedback. If you know how YouTube works, YouTube is looking for interaction, right? YouTube is a business. They want to make money. So they want you to watch commercials. They want you to watch different things because YouTube sells those spots, right? So YouTube allows us a platform to put our videos on, and they throw commercials in the videos, okay? Because they're a business. Google is there to make money, okay? Whether you like them or not, that's what they're there for, okay? So we put our content up, they throw commercials on it. They kick back a little bit of that commercial revenue to the content creators once you've reached a certain level. Trust me, they don't kick it all. It's a very small percentage. Usually it's about 30% or something like that of the revenue. But you know what? Support any channels that you guys watch. I encourage you guys. If you, it doesn't matter if it's HVAC or anything, leave a heart, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, do anything you can to support any channels that you watch and let them know that you're there, because we're always looking for feedback, okay? So, again, thanks so much for coming in here, all right? We've got lots of great stuff to talk about. So, remember, if you got questions and comments, put them in caps lock. Looks like the chat's rolling past right now, so it's going to be hard for me to catch up with all of them, but all right, let's see. If you huff too much refrigerant, you end up shopping at Value Testas. You got me on that one. The 98 DeVille, you got me. Value Testas. That's right. If you watch, if you huff enough refrigerant, you will end up shopping at Value Testas. That's right. All right, and that's just having fun. I'm not making, you know, not being negative about anybody. Everybody has a little quirk. I'm certain people will make fun of me too, and it's all good. I love criticism. I love feedback. You know, there's some people out there that will make like funny memes of things that I do, and then they send them to me, and I think they're great. I think they're funny. As long as you're not being a jerk, I'm all for that stuff. I'm all for interaction and people having fun with this stuff, okay? How many turns out on a Sporlan TXV for a factory setting starting point? Matt, okay, so a Sporlan TXV and furthermore an Emerson TXV or any of those are typically going to be in the midpoint, okay, is going to be the factory set point. So what you want to do, if you want to find out, like let's say someone's been cranking on a valve and it's just way out of adjustment, what you want to do, obviously with the system off, you want to be careful with the system on doing this, is you want to exercise that valve in and out, okay? So what you do is run the valve all the way in, okay? And then run the valve all the way out and count how many turns it took to get from in to out until it won't turn, okay? Or until it's done. You don't want to just sit there and crank on it, right? Count how many turns it is, divide that in half, and run it in those half turns, if that makes sense, okay? And then that's typically the starting point. That's the midpoint. And then from there, let the system get turned back on, let it stabilize out, check it out, and then adjust accordingly. You typically, when you're adjusting an expansion valve, you do not want to make big turns. You want to make quarter to half turns, let it stabilize for a few minutes, and you'll notice that it's going to take a few minutes of up and down, and then the valve's going to settle down. Also, something to understand when you're adjusting any expansion valve out there, okay? You typically don't want to do it on a system or any thermostatic expansion valve. You don't want to do it on a system that is not somewhat close to the actual set point of the box, what the box was designed to maintain. If you have a walk-in cooler that's 70 degrees because you just turned it on, don't go to the expansion valve and expect to set the superheat on it when it's that high in temp, because that valve is just wide open, overloaded, trying to do what it's supposed to do, which is bring the temperature of the coil down so that way it can properly regulate the superheat. So you want to be within 5 to 10 degrees of set point before you start adjusting on the valves, and just give it time after you make adjustments, okay? All right, let's see what else we got going on inside here. Let me see. Who's a better pupper, my dog or Miss Molly? Oh, I don't know. I don't know who's. I'm sure Steve. He's referring to Steve Lav. Steve Lav's another content creator. He's a plumber and air conditioning technician somewhere on the East Coast. I think maybe Massachusetts, because someone said Mass. And Steve Lav has a character on there. His dog is Miss Molly. If you guys haven't watched Steve Lav, you're hiding under a rock, because Steve's one of the biggest content creators out there. So definitely go check him out, okay? He's a character. He's a funny dude. And I've laughed pretty hard watching some of his stuff when he might get some of the things he says to some of his customers. I could never do that, but it makes me crack up when he'll just flat out to a customer's face say, "Are you stupid?" Like, and it's just like, what? But it's just hilarious sometimes listening to that guy talk, okay? All right, so let's see. I had a couple videos the last week. One of them was really, really popular. I got lots to talk about that video, okay? I want to start out with something, though, is Mike had emailed me and he asked me about the new AWEF compliant head pressure control valves, and he was concerned about them. There's been a lot of concern and industry uproar about the head pressure control valves that are in a lot of the new equipment, okay? Understand something. Heatcraft Refrigeration is not the one that decided to put a 100 or 150 psi bypass head pressure control valve in their condensing unit, okay? What they're doing is they're trying to meet regulations set by the federal government for walk-in coolers and freezers, typically, that have square footage of 3,000 square feet or less. They have new energy regulations they have to meet. They call it the AWEF, AWEF, Annual Walk-in Efficiency Factor, right? And it's just some new regulations by the Department of Energy that basically says that this equipment has to meet certain energy guidelines. Now, the Department of Energy doesn't say that they have to put in these head pressure control valves, but they basically give them a criteria that they have to meet that reduces energy consumption of most of this equipment, okay? So on refrigeration equipment, how can we reduce the energy consumption? Well, we can put on variable speed motors, ECM motors, different things like that, 2-speed motors, they do that. But then on top of that, what they can do is they can reduce the operating current of the compressor. Well, in order to do that, one of the ways you can do that is you can float the head pressure down or reduce the operating head pressure on those refrigeration systems. So these manufacturers are being put up against a wall and they're being told your equipment that you manufacture has to meet certain guidelines, and they have to figure out a way to do it. So they add ECM motors to it, they oversize condensers, and they start doing different things to try to reduce the condensing temperature of the equipment. Adding head pressure control valves that have very low bypass pressures, really low, that scares a lot of people that don't know how to work with it. With that being said, that equipment needs to be sized appropriately. You need to have very closely matched evaporator and condensers. You need to, as far as BTU output goes, okay? You need to have a properly sized expansion valve. Now, it's very important that we understand that in the past, a lot of people used to throw expansion valves on systems and just say, this should work, you know? Well, with this new equipment that we have these days, we have to be pretty right on when it comes to sizing the components for our equipment. And when we have these issues with the refrigeration equipment, this is actually what I was just talking to my buddy Brett about, is just some of the things we have to consider, okay? When it comes to size and expansion valves, you have to pay attention to the coldest condensing temp it's going to operate at and the highest condensing temp it's going to operate at, okay? And we have to size that valve. That way it can operate properly within those guidelines. So if you have a really cold ambient, you need to be concerned and make sure that your valves are sized correctly. So Mike, you asked me what you're going to do, and he was concerned about these new condensing units he's buying. First and foremost, what you need to understand is if you're buying a new AWEF compliant refrigeration condensing unit, you need to make sure you understand if your expansion valve is sized appropriately, okay? You need to make sure and do that research. There's lots of different methods. Sporlan has a new tech document. I showed it last week. I don't know where it is, so I'm going to be very unprepared to show it again this week. I don't have it right here. Let's see. There we go. Sporlan has a new tech document that makes it a little bit easy. It's a 500-10 AWEF. And it breaks it down, basically. They take the common factors of how equipment is manufactured, and you basically can follow that chart, and for the most part, it'll help you to size your valves appropriately, okay? But you can also get into the nitty-gritty. Sporlan has their virtual engineer program. You can go to the website. You can input all the information, the pressure drop across your distributor, the liquid line temperature, the evaporator temperature, the liquid line pressure, all that different stuff, and it'll help you to calculate a valve that falls and will operate properly within specs on that equipment. Also these days, we have a lot of new regulations that come into play when it comes to using different refrigerants, okay? So they're trying to reduce global warming and different things like that, so they're getting rid of a lot of refrigerants. So for instance, here in Southern California, for the last 2 years now, it's actually technically illegal to install a new refrigeration system with 404A refrigerant. Okay, you're not supposed to do that. You can still use systems with 404, but once you have to make major repairs to them, technically you're supposed to remove the 404 and convert it to a refrigerant that has, you know, all the fancy numbers that meets global warming requirements and different things like that. Okay, so we're having to make refrigerants that have higher glides, right? So those are things we need to consider and be concerned about. With that being said, with these high glide refrigerants, like for instance, 448A is the refrigerant I've been using a lot, and it has a really big glide to it, okay? That's the difference in saturation temperatures from the entrance and the exit of the coil can be huge, okay? The capacity is going to change on some of that. So we have to understand that. We don't just throw 448A in a system and say we're good. You have to make sure. So on 448A, for the most part, your condensing unit is going to put out less capacity in the summertime, but your evaporator is going to put out more capacity or have more capacity, okay? So the stamped number on the back of the model number for your condenser or your evaporator might be a 14,000 BTU evaporator, right, with 404A. Well, you might get 15,000 BTUs out of it or something like that with 448A. So you can size accordingly on that, and you have to look at the performance data of the equipment to know how it's going to operate, and you have to size accordingly. I highly suggest that people look into engineering programs to size the equipment. Heatcraft has one. They have a new program on the Heatcraft Hub, and this is something I was actually having a conference call with some guys from Heatcraft, Heatcraft Refrigeration, one of the major manufacturers out there, and we were having a conference call and we were talking about a few things, and I didn't know this, but Heatcraft has a new app. You can download an app. It's called I believe it's the Heatcraft Hub. And something really cool about it that I don't think many other people, if anybody at all, is doing, is that their app has load calculation software built into it. So you can do a load calculation on a walk-in cooler on your phone. That's really cool. I hope more manufacturers start following that. That's really cool. Russell Refrigeration, all those different companies, they all have great load calculation programs online that'll help you to size equipment and make sure that it's matched appropriately. So, but Mike, again, to get back, because I went off on a big tangent about that, to get back to your question, what do you do when these head pressure control valves are, you know, bypassing way too low for what you think is low? Well, you got to size your valves right. But then also, you need to understand that it's not always going to be okay to buy off-the-shelf equipment from a distributor. Sometimes you might have to get an engineer involved and say, hey, you know what? I'm operating this in an extremely low ambient. It might be negative 20 degrees outside. What things do I need to do? And they might add extra components. You see, supply houses sell Heatcraft refrigeration equipment, right? You can buy a condensing unit with all the components that are the most popular components in it, but you can also go to Heatcraft and say, I need this spec'd out appropriately to have receiver heaters, to have this or that. You know, you can spec equipment appropriately, and it's not just what the distributor has. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're operating in weird conditions, really low ambience and different things like that. There might be some things you need to consider. We as technicians need to do a better job of understanding what's really going on, and not just necessarily trusting the supply house when they say, yeah, this should be good. I hate the word should. Should is such a cop-out. I hate that word. I don't want to know if it should be good. I want to know that it will be good. That's what I want to know. When I buy something and I say, is this the right valve? Yeah, it should be fine. That's not what I want to hear, and I'm not going to trust you anymore. Okay, I have trust issues, but I like to get my hands on things and do the research myself. And I'm certainly not an expert at it at all, but I like to research things. I like to figure out, why is it that we put a head pressure control valve on a system? Why is it that we have a fan cycling control on a system? Why? What's the point? Why do we need to maintain a head pressure? Well, it's because, especially with the older thermostatically controlled expansion valves, they had to have a certain pressure differential across the valve, right? And I've explained this a million times. You know, again, this is a rudimentary explanation. That expansion valve needs to see refrigerant going through it at a certain flow rate. And if it doesn't have that certain flow rate going through it, then the valve's mechanical action that opens and closes it isn't going to happen at the right times, and therefore it's not going to maintain the evaporator superheat that it's supposed to do. So we call that a pressure differential, okay? But I use flow because a lot of people understand that easier. We need to have a set pressure differential across that expansion valve. The liquid pressure needs to be X, and the outlet of that valve needs to be X in order for it to work and fluctuate properly and open and close properly. Now, we have newer expansion valves that have the ability of operating with lower pressure differentials across the valve. We have electronic expansion valves. That's really critical. with a lot of these new regulations, you're going to find that electronic expansion valves are going to be more and more necessary. And for me, that's a struggle because I'm an old school technician that doesn't necessarily like new technology. I'm stubborn. And having to sell systems with EXVs, and it's like, oh, wow, you know, this particular brand of EXV, I see the stator or the coil go bad quite often. And I hate to sell my customer that particular brand because it's going to go bad. But I mean, we have to start using more of this technology because we need it, right? The cool thing, though, is that we also have that technology, right? And we also have the ability to have a compressor that has variable capacity. That is really cool. All right. We used to have mechanical variable capacity where you'd have an unloader on it, or you'd have a valve that would inject refrigerant into different places in the compressor and different things like that, inject hot gas and different stuff, right? But now you can actually have a variable speed compressor, but you introduce all kinds of new stuff, right? Because a variable speed compressor is going to need a VFD, a variable frequency drive, to drive that compressor to turn it on and speed it up and slow it down. Well, what happens when you use VFDs? I show it a lot in my area. When you don't have proper power conditioning, proper power protection for those VFDs, you have a high failure rate on VFDs. So it's not just a simple throw a variable speed compressor on there. It's not as simple as that. So we as contractors and technicians need to understand that there's limitations to technology too. And we have to think about the big picture. You have to think about things. You don't just go out there and throw on, well, unfortunately, a lot of people do. Manufacturers have been forced, and so they just sell equipment, and contractors aren't really thinking about this kind of stuff. But I've installed probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 Carrier package units, right? And I'm not dogging on Carrier, but I've installed 15 to 20 Carrier package units, maybe 100 Lennox package units in the last couple years, and they all have variable frequency drives in them now. And we've seen failure after failure after failure on the VFDs. And sure, there's a cause. The VFD probably didn't just go bad on its own. It was probably murdered, right? Just like my buddy Brett and I were just talking on the phone about how compressors get murdered, right? Compressors typically don't go bad. Something causes them to go bad, right? And it's understanding what causes those things to go bad, understanding the limitations of the technology, and knowing what we as technicians and business owners have to do to make the technology work at its full peak, efficiency or whatever, right? We have to put power conditioning on this equipment. We have to have, phase monitors and voltage monitors that look for brownouts and high voltage situations. And, VFDs really shouldn't be installed in the package unit in the high heat area in the heating season and low humidity, right? And then the really high humidity and low temperature, high moisture areas in the summertime, right? Because, it causes these things to fail. In a perfect world, a VFD is not installed in a package unit. And I'm not blaming the manufacturers, because they're the same thing with the DOE requirements and the AWEF requirements. These manufacturers are the ones, see, they're not pushing it on the contractors, they're pushing it on the manufacturers. It's our job as the contractors to look at this equipment and say, that's going to fail. We should probably talk the customer into relocating that to a better place. I bet you if on these package units that we have VFDs for the indoor blower motors that constantly fail, I bet you anything, if we took those VFDs out of the package unit, had them properly installed in a mechanical room downstairs in a conditioned space, or even just a moderately conditioned space, right? And had some sort of power protection on them, that the failure rate on those drives would drop. But unfortunately, they're installed in the worst places because the manufacturers have no other choice. They're up against a wall. They're told you have to make equipment that meets these requirements. And we as consumers demand cheaper, 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 but yet they have to meet these things. So therefore, they have to do what they have to do to be able to stay in business and make this equipment. So also at the same time, there is also manufacturers out there that are just plain dumb and make dumb equipment. So it's our job to also know which manufacturers those are. I'm not going to name names, but hey, in the chat right now, name some of those manufacturers that make the dumbest equipment you can ever think of, okay? I'm not going to agree or disagree, but I know when I see them. You guys know which manufacturers there are. There's some of those guys out there that just make the dumbest equipment. Throw it in the chat right now. Let me know what you guys think, okay? All right, so now that I just spent, what? How long did I spend talking about a ridiculous amount of time talking about one thing? Looks like 40 minutes talking about one thing. Let's keep going, okay? Let me see what else we got in here. What was the dirtiest ice machine I have ever worked on? It was at a Mexican restaurant, and the machines were just completely black with growing mold on the inside. And I probably have pictures on a hard drive somewhere. I just don't know where those pictures are. It was long before I did videos. It was a fancy chain Mexican restaurant that is across the country. I don't do work for them anymore. But they were big in the 80s, and then they kind of petered off in the 90s and were just kind of riding the wave into the 2000s, and they damn near went completely under, but they kind of resurrected themselves, got rid of a lot of the baggage that they had within their company because they decided they wanted to become one of these giant companies. And this is interesting, guys, right? So we have all these companies out there right now. There's a trend going on in the residential side, and it's starting to bleed over into the commercial side where consolidation. Oh, we're going to become the biggest company out there. We're going to grab up every company out there, and we're going to become these giant companies. Yeah, that's happened a lot too in the past. And most of the time, the consolidations don't work out too well, and it hurts things more than anything, right? I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen on the HVAC side, but I saw these restaurants do that where they just, I'm going to buy up every restaurant and we're going to be the biggest restaurant chain in the country. And then things don't really work out, and they start just getting rid of these restaurants and getting rid of them and downsizing and becoming just normal restaurant operations that they can maintain. I'm kind of curious if that's what is going to happen with all this consolidation that's going on in HVAC. It's kind of scary when you think about it, because most of the consolidation that's going on in HVAC is not HVAC operators buying another operator. It's private equity coming in and saying, well, we want a piece of that pie, so we're going to throw a bunch of money and buy a bunch of companies, and then we're going to hire someone to run all those companies. And sometimes the people they hire to run those companies don't even have anything to do with HVAC. They're just a banker that thinks, oh, we got to make profits, so you guys need to do this. And yeah, that's a whole nother disaster coming in the future. So get ready for that one. All right, so let me cross those couple things I talked about off my list. Let me cross that stuff off of my list. So recent video that I did this last week, Sunday, actually yesterday, was a air conditioner that it would actually happen all the way back in June, but it was an air conditioner that I had to change an evaporator on. I just saw the 98 DeVille. Thank you so very much for that super chat, man. He says, smash the thumbs up button. Please do it, guys. It definitely helps out the stream. 98 DeVille, thanks so much for that super chat. It's much appreciated. It definitely helps out. So thank you very much, bud. Okay. So recent video, we changed an evaporator on a carrier package unit, and I made a mistake, guys. Guys, I'm human. We all make mistakes. And there was a lot of people that criticized me in the chat or in the comments about the mistake that I made. If nobody makes mistakes, or if they say they're not making mistakes, they're lying. It's what we do when we find the mistake, if we can actually catch ourselves making the mistake and remedying it, right? In my situation, I realized right quick. I went to go put service gauges on the carrier package unit, right? And when I put the service gauges on there, they did not depress the Schraders properly. So the system was flat. What are the odds, though? It was like a turn of events. What are the odds that the high and low side both didn't depress the Schraders, right? They were both reading 0 PSI. Go figure. So I started to do a leak search. I mean, I added a little bit of refrigerant and some nitrogen to the system so that way I could do a leak search. And then all of a sudden, as I was getting ready to add the nitrogen, boom, the pressures went up, and I didn't really catch it at first. And then I caught it after I added some nitrogen to the system. The system had the full refrigerant charge in it, and I dumped nitrogen on top of it. Okay? So I ran into a problem, but I caught it, and I remedied the mistake. I showed a cool little trick. I'd never done that before, but I figured it would work. And I was able to get rid of the nitrogen out of the refrigerant cylinder by simply putting it outside, letting the cylinder heat up to the ambient temperature, and then looking at the pressure-temperature relationship and checking the pressures and the saturation temperature, and that saturation temperature was higher than the outdoor ambient temperature. So I removed the nitrogen until the saturation temperature of the R22 refrigerant met the outdoor ambient conditions, and I gave it time to stabilize out, and I was able to save that refrigerant. Okay. So I'm human. I make mistakes. That's life. That's what we do. We all make mistakes. That happens to be a failure of the Cormax fitting. The Cormax fitting are kind of like a a controversial little fitting in our industry, and they really do cause a lot of problems. Okay, so whenever possible, I replace Cormax fittings. So whenever I'm working on systems, I'll replace them. In hindsight, I was going to replace it on that system, even if I had to make a repair and I didn't contaminate the refrigerant, I would have changed the Cormax fittings. I suggest that you guys, anytime you open up a system and you take all the refrigerant out, if it has Cormax fittings on it, change those Cormax fittings, okay? And also keep in mind, I was thinking about something. When you use the Cormax fitting, they're a high flow Schrader. They're a different type of Schrader valve, right? And you use Schrader depressors, right? Because sometimes they have those mechanical Schrader depressors that you turn and it pushes a plunger down. Don't max those mechanical Schrader depressors out, because you're going to stress that Schrader to the max, and you don't want to do that. So just crack it. All right. Ike, thank you so very much for being a channel supporter. I really appreciate that, bud. And Ramon C., thank you very much for that super chat, man. That is awesome. Ike reminds me, just seeing his name right there, I was reaching out to Ike. Ike and I have talked a few times. He operates a Discord server that's technically the HVACR videos Discord server. It's a cool little place for everybody to go hang out and stuff. I always do this. I do not have the Discord link as usual. Let me see. Yeah, Ike, send me the Discord link in Messenger right now. I think I can pull that up. And I'll shoot the Discord link over if my Facebook ever opens up. Let's give it a second here. Facebook is not loading for me. So anyways, Ike is helping me build a computer. So I've got a bunch of computer parts actually stacked up there right now. And I'm hoping that I get everything this weekend. And maybe we'll be building that computer this weekend. So we'll see. It's the first time I've ever done it. Ike kind of talked me into it, and I think we might be able to figure this out. So yeah, I did get my Messenger pulled up, Ike. So if you get an opportunity, send me the Discord link over to my Messenger, and I'll try to post it in here right now. So that'll be something cool for me to do. Never done it before. We'll see. My computer is maxed to the limit when I'm editing videos and doing streams and stuff, and I have plans for the future. So I need to go ahead and update this stuff. Let me see what else we got in here. Yeah, there we go right there. Actually, I might even have it. I actually have it right here, Ike. I found it in our chat already. So I'm going to throw the Discord link. If you guys aren't already a member of the Discord server, it's just a really cool chat room. So, lots of different channels and different things. So this is a link to the Discord server popping up in there right now. Now, in all fairness, I'm not on the Discord server very often. I pop in there every once in a while, but it's a cool little thing where everybody can kind of communicate and stuff. And, you know, it's just a different way than Facebook to communicate. So definitely check it out if you guys don't already, okay? All right. Cool. Yeah, I just put it in there, Ike, so I got it. All right, so I'm going to close that out, and then, yeah, let's go ahead and get to this. So, in that video that I repaired that package unit, I answer this all the time, guys, but I got a bunch of questions in there. Why in the heck did I repair that package unit, and why not sell them a new unit? Because the customer, bottom line, didn't want a unit. That's it. Mr. P, I really appreciate that super chat, man, and he said, my mistake fix was gold. Yeah, you know, I try to own up to it. Now, I asked a question, and I'd like to know what you guys think in the chat too, okay? Do me a favor, guys, smash the like button, because the likes and the viewers need to be aligned to be able to help this channel get known a little bit more, okay? So I asked a question in the video because I accidentally put nitrogen in there. So if I was not able to save that refrigerant, would that have been my fault? And is it fair for me if I wasn't able to save that refrigerant, would it be fair for me to charge the customer for the refrigerant? Now, my opinion, I said it in the video, was yes, I would have charged the customer for the refrigerant if I had to sell them new refrigerant, because that stupid Schrader core, I didn't put that on there. And that thing had failed. Mistakes happen. Of course, there could have been things that I could have done, but you know what? Life happens. So that was R22 refrigerant. Heck no, I wasn't going to eat that cost. I would have charged the customer for that R22 refrigerant. Now, if it was a blatant mistake, if I stuck a screw through a condenser and it leaked out the entire charge, that would have been my fault. That was something that I just, stupid me, you know? But that stupid Cormax fitting, that's not my fault, man. You know, that's the way I see it. But I'm curious, what do you guys think in the chat? You know? Let me see. Why don't HVAC companies pay much fresh out of school? Peter Ortega. So in my area, Peter, an HVAC technician fresh out of school will make anywhere from $15 to $18 an hour. Why isn't it that I, as a contractor, will not pay more to a technician fresh out of school? Because you're not making me money. And I have to make an investment into you, because just because you went to school and became a certified technician doesn't mean that you actually have field experience and know what you're doing. So when you're fresh out of school, you still have to learn. And I have to take that on. So I'm currently training an apprentice right now, and he's doing really good. But that is a gamble for me, because he works with me every day and I pay him. And typically as an apprenticeship, you're not charging very much for those technicians. Sometimes I might charge for my apprentice if he helps me out in a certain situation, but for the most part, I'm not charging for his time. So I'm training him, teaching him, and it's an investment that I'm making into him. At the same time, I'm still paying him, just not a full technician's wages. So it takes time for me to be able to get my investment to a point that you start generating revenue for the company. Now, once you start generating revenue for the company, then of course you need to get paid well. But it takes time to learn. So you have to earn your keep, basically. You have to apprentice and you have to learn. And then there'll become a point when you become a journeyman technician or whatever they call it in your area. And then, of course, you deserve to be paid appropriately, right? HVAC technicians that are experienced in my area can make anywhere from $25 to $45 an hour in restaurant refrigeration, depending on their experience and their skill level. Anything past 35, you're typically going to start taking a supervisor position or a management position. You get into heavy commercial, heavy industrial, you can make more than that. You get into sales on the residential side, you can make more than that. It all just depends, okay? It's about the area you go into. All right, let's see what else we got in here. An aviation mechanic fresh out of school makes $37 an hour. Top out pay in 7 years at $54 an hour at Delta LAX. Yeah, I don't know, man. You're not doing what you're not learning enough in school doing HVAC. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to where you start generating revenue for the company, and the company's going to have to put time in you to learn. Now, it'd be one thing if you came out of HVAC school a legit mechanic that could fix everything he touches. Well, heck yeah, you deserve to be paid. But if you don't know everything yet, it's going to take time. And I can't pay out of my own pocket an apprentice $37 an hour, so that way 6 months from now he can decide he doesn't want to work for me anymore because the next guy gave him $1 an hour more raise, and then I lost all that money that I paid him the whole time while he wasn't making me any money. That can be a struggle. So it's a delicate balance we got to do. Okay. All right. So why didn't my customer replace that equipment? Because I don't know. It's not my decision. I'm not there to convince the customer to replace it. It's different on the residential and commercial side. And I can argue that I don't even think on the residential side you should be convincing a customer to replace something. But that's a whole nother argument for another day. I give my customer the facts. This is how much it's going to be to fix. This is how much it's going to be to replace. I strongly suggest you replace. That's my opinion. But it's in their hands. They make the decision to repair it. Therefore, they do. And the same thing goes with R22 refrigerant. Why in the heck did I use R22 refrigerant? I'm doing a disservice to the customer. No, I'm not. I gave the customer a choice. I actually just had a phone call with a major corporate facilities director recently the other day. Hey, bud, it's been a while since I've talked to you. I want to kind of educate you on R22 refrigerant. It's being phased out. It's getting really expensive. There's some alternatives. There's some possible problems with the alternatives, but it could save you a lot of money. Are you willing to take that risk? Do you want me to keep using R22? You know, efficiency losses, it's minimal, but still there's a little bit of efficiency loss, and there's problems that could happen with, you know, these alternative refrigerants and different things. And the facilities directors that I've talked to said, nah, just stick with R22. And I said, are you sure? Because I was about to do a repair, and I said, the price difference from the repair that I was going to do if I used an alternative to using R22 is going to be about $1,000 to $1,500 difference. So I said, it can cost up to $1,500 more if I use R22. And he said, just stick with R22. Okay. I give the tech or the customers the information, and I let them make the decision. So, all right, let's see what else we got going on in here. Seth Zubay, thank you so very much for that super chat, bud. I really appreciate it. Let's see. You have always been told there's a difference in a mechanic, a tech versus a certified parts installer. And that's a good point. You know, there's also several different classifications for service technicians, mechanics, but he makes a good point. There's the difference between a technician / mechanic, and a guy that literally just throws parts at it because someone told him to. A mechanic / service technician digs into it and says, this is why it failed, and then replaces the part, and then goes to the customer and said, now that I replaced the part, we need to fix these other things, or I'm going to be back tomorrow changing this part again. Right? So a parts installer or a salesman is just going to go out there and say, this is what you need. That's it. And then someone will come in and install it, and they'll be back out a couple months later and changing the part again. And then the customer is going to get frustrated, and it's just going to lead. That's not all salesmen. I do have to preface that. I have to be careful with saying that. So, all right, we covered that one. And let me cross that off the list of things to talk about. Let's get in here. Could I please explain why evaporator freeze-ups have different ice patterns and what it means? HVACR technician. I actually have that on my list of things to talk about. So when it comes to evaporators, I say this all the time. When you have a frozen up evaporator on an air conditioner, on a package unit, on a freezer, on whatever, if you have a frozen up evaporator, you always want to pay attention to how it's frozen up. It can tell you a lot about what's going on with the system. Technicians will call me and say, yeah, the walk-in cooler is iced up. Okay, I de-iced it and it's good now. Well, why did it ice up? I don't know. Okay, so then they leave and then we get a call back. Yeah, the walk-in cooler is iced up again. Okay, it's actually low on refrigerant. Well, did you check that last time? Well, no, because it was iced up and I just thought, you know, I'd defrost it. So had we looked into the first time, the ice pattern, and it should have drawn a red flag. You know, hey, something's not right here. Now, I'm not going to say that there's an absolute way that I can tell you that if an evaporator's iced up just on the top and not on the bottom, it doesn't always mean low refrigerant, but it means something's wrong, okay? If you have an evaporator that's iced up top to bottom, front to back, all the way through the coil, usually that means that the system is running too long or running too cold. Okay, typically that is not a refrigerant related problem. It's not low charge or something like that causing it to ice up. So typically if you see it top to bottom, front to back, all the way through, it's usually it's too cold, it's running too long, or someone's leaving a door open usually, or defrost isn't working. Okay. Now, if you walk up to a system, air conditioner, refrigerator, whatever, and you see little sections like 1 2-inch section of the evaporator's iced up all the way across, and then 4 inches down, another 2-inch section, and then maybe another 2-inch section, that's going to be a refrigeration problem. Maybe you have a restriction in the system. Maybe you have low charge. Who knows? Okay. Or you see an expansion valve that's just a solid block of ice. Well, maybe there's something restricting inside that expansion valve. Okay. And let me preface something. There's so many people out there that replace expansion valves because they think, oh, expansion valves just fail all the time. Expansion valves have a really low failure rate. Oftentimes they are misdiagnosed and replaced, okay? Now, sometimes they have to be replaced because of the diagnoses, right? So expansion valve might be gummed up with gunk. It might be full of all kinds of nastiness because the system has horrible oil and it's just plugging up the expansion valve. So you might have to replace the expansion valve if it doesn't have a strainer that would catch all that stuff. But you need to solve the problem. Why did the expansion valve get gummed up with gunk? But a lot of the times, you know, expansion valves will actually just have a plugged up strainer. They'll have a restriction before the valve. And oftentimes, if you're using a Sporlan valve, majority of their valves have a strainer on the outside. Well, there's a couple that you can buy that have a strainer on the inside. I don't understand why there's a strainer that's brazed into the system. That's the stupidest thing in the world to me. To be honest with you, and you guys are probably all going to scream at me, if I have an expansion valve that does not have a mechanical strainer, like a nut on the top, typically I don't install the strainer because I find it to be dumb. If the strainer plugs up, the valve's not going to work. If there's no strainer and the valve plugs up, the valve's not going to work. I'm probably going to get feedback for that, but I honestly don't see much of a point of putting a strainer that's brazed into an expansion valve. It just seems silly to me, okay? But buy a valve that has a thing on it. Actually, I have a strainer right here. Hold on. Shoot, I don't know where my strainer is. It should be right in front of me right now. I usually have a strainer right here. Yeah, I don't see it. But most expansion valves will have on the Sporlan valves. That's going to drive me nuts. I can't find it. But they'll have a strainer that you can actually take off, and it's just after the valve's brazed in, there's like a little mechanical spot. And if you have a flare valve, on the old flare valves, you pull the flare nut off on the inlet of the valve and there'll be a strainer right behind the flare nut. Those are amazing because you can pull that strainer out, clean it, swap it, and usually the valve will take off, right? Or you might have a power head failure, which is the power head element on the top of the valve that opens the valve, right? You might have a power head failure. That happens because maybe someone didn't install it and secure the power head sensing bulb right, and it rubbed up and, you know, or it rusted out because there's a lot of moisture on the top of the valve. Who knows, okay? But majority of the time, it's not the valve. It's usually something that caused it to not work properly, okay? So when it comes to icing up, pay attention. Look at the ice patterns, okay? You can look at ice on an evaporator coil if you de-ice enough of them, and you can tell that it's been trying to defrost because the ice looks really glossy, and it's not like a frost, and it's not just ice. It looks like it's been frozen and then thawed and then refrozen and then thawed and then refrozen, right? Because it's going through defrost, but it can't defrost at all. And so it kind of thaws and starts dripping and then it refreezes. There's all kinds of different stuff you can see if we just open our eyes and look at the big picture. That's the most important thing, okay? All right, so let me cross that off the list because that was actually on my list to talk about. I also lost some of the things on my list because my computer decided to update just before the stream, and that got really frustrating. Yeah, so if I emailed you guys and said I was going to talk about something and I don't today, it's because the dang my computer just started updating right before the stream and I lost everything. I saw something one time and I want to get I want to classify myself as a professional evaporator defroster because, man, do I go out on walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers all the time. That's probably my #1 failure on walk-in coolers and walk-in freezers is iced up because something failed, but they ice up. And why do evaporators ice up on walk-ins so much? Well, it's physics. The evaporator's saturation temperature is below freezing, especially on a walk-in freezer, but on a walk-in cooler too. If you're maintaining a 37-degree box, on average, our evaporator TD is about 10 degrees. That means our saturation temperature is about 10 degrees colder than the ambient temperature inside the box. So if we're maintaining a 37-degree box, that means the saturation temperature in a perfect world is 27 degrees. Therefore, the evaporator is below freezing. So you have to defrost it, right? Sometimes we do off cycles, sometimes we do defrost clocks, different things like that. On a walk-in freezer, you have to do a defrost, and you have some sort of a hot gas defrost or electric defrost that runs strip heaters. You have to do that because walk-in freezers typically, for a standard general walk-in freezer that has ice cream in it, we're going to set it to maintain -10 degrees. Therefore, the evaporator's saturation temperature is going to get sometimes 10 degrees below that. So -20 degree evaporator temperature, you definitely are going to get some ice buildup on that, okay? So that's why stuff ices up. You know, if someone leaves a door open, you're going to be bringing in ambient temperature into that box, and it's going to never shut off and just run and run and run, and it's going to start to build up frost and ice up, okay? All right, let's see what else. What else we got going on in here? I know there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing, so it looks like we're definitely going to have to cover some of this next thing, okay? So let's see what else we got in here. Suspect massive overlap in the future. You are telling you rules. Oh, I don't know what that means. All right. Pros and cons on union HVAC versus non-union companies in my area. Okay, so the big debate, union or non-union. Guess what? Your decision to make. And it really depends on how your family... what your family needs, okay? And how strong is the union in your area. So unions are not super strong in Southern California. They definitely are not in the restaurant side of things. They're more in the heavy commercial air conditioning and refrigeration stuff. But even on the supermarket side, the unions are not strong in Southern California, okay? So you're typically not going to see a union company, and they've tried it. Union companies have tried to come into the restaurant stuff, and it just doesn't work out, right? Unions are good. Unions are bad. There's good and bad to union and non-union, and it really depends on the needs of you and your own, right? Is it best for your family to go with a union company that provides you work year-round, that provides you X number of training, that provides healthcare and all this different stuff? You could input a non-union company into that same situation. Some companies offer all the union benefits without the union dues, okay? It just depends on where you're at, right? Union is not super strong in the restaurant side of things in Southern California. I have a buddy, though, that does commercial air conditioning that went union about 4 or 5 years ago, and he loves it, loves everything about it, okay? Good for him. You go to the Midwest, you go back east, you go New York State, different things like that. Unions are super strong. Go to Chicago, the unions are strong, but there's non-union there too. So you really need to weigh out the benefits and decide what's best for you and your family. But the questions, no matter who you go to work for, that you want to ask not just the company, but the employees, the supply houses, and the people that just know people at that company is, how often are people getting laid off? Okay, this is union or non-union. What are the benefits like at that company? How's the pay like? What's the morale like? All right. Do people get along there? I mean, it's just about doing your research and finding out what you like. Okay. So Southern California, if you want to do restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning, I don't think union is going to be your best choice. Okay. But in the Midwest, back east, maybe it's a good choice. You know, it really depends on what's best for you and your own. Okay. All right. Someone had sent me an email or a comment, and I told them I would talk about this on here, but I didn't get context to their comment. But they left me a comment on my YouTube channel on a video, and they said, I am crazy because I'm testing contactors when they're energized. I don't know how else you're going to test a contactor. I mean, sometimes you have to energize equipment when you're working in HVAC and work on it live while it's energized. Of course, you need to take proper safety practices. Of course, there's OSHA requirements. Of course, if you're working on 480 volts and higher, there's big time OSHA requirements and things that you can do to protect yourself, okay? And there's OSHA requirements on 120 volts, 24 volts, 240 volts, all that different stuff. But there's going to come a point in time when you're testing and maintaining equipment that you are going to have to work on it energized. So if you do have a problem with that, HVAC is not for you, okay? Because you're going to have to get your hands dirty. But of course, using proper safety practices, right? And I am not an OSHA trained, certified company, all that fancy stuff, right? I don't do OSHA training. So therefore, I don't show a lot of that stuff in my videos because I have no business teaching that kind of stuff, okay? All right. Brandon had emailed me and he said he was interested in HVAC because he works in a restaurant. Now, I'm paraphrasing some things. Brandon has some really good questions too, but I'm going to point out something right now, and I'm not digging at you, Brandon. I'm just going to make a point, and then I'm going to answer a lot of your questions too, okay? So Brandon emailed me saying that he was interested in HVACR because he works in a restaurant and he sees how much money can be made. He sees the invoices that the HVAC guys make. So Brandon's, I'm paraphrasing what he said, he thinks that we can make tons of money in HVAC, okay? So I found a little bit of interesting stuff in the first part of your question, Brandon. Whether or not you meant it that way, I'm going to address it this way, okay? Just because you see a company charging big invoices does not necessarily mean that company is successful and that company is making a lot of money, okay? There is something called overhead. Overhead is something that nobody understands. It's what it takes to do what you have to do to sell your services, right? And oftentimes we have expenses that I have to pay as a business owner that do not make me a single penny. I have office staff sitting in the office doing paperwork, sending out emails, billing and doing different stuff like that. They're technically not generating revenue for me. That is part of the business, but they're not a service technician out there doing something and handing a bill. They're the people that are sending the bill. I have to maintain vehicles. I have to pay fuel charges. I have to buy parts. I have to do all kinds of different stuff. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm making a lot of money, okay? But yes, you can make very good money if you run your business properly in HVAC, okay? So with that being said, I'm not trying to criticize you, Brandon, okay, because you have a lot of great questions that I'm going to tackle. I can't tackle all of his questions right now. He's asking, he wants to get into HVAC. Should he go to trade school? Will that give him an edge? Yes, Brandon, any education is better than no education, all right? Do you have to go to trade school to work in HVACR? Not in Southern California. There's some parts of the country that you might have to. There's some parts of the world. But in California, you don't have to go to trade school. You just have to have a federally mandated EPA certification, which is a simple test that you can take as long as you memorize a few different things that teaches you that it is against the law and it is wrong to vent refrigerant into the atmosphere. That is the only thing you have to have in Southern California or in California to be an HVAC service technician, okay? So you do not have to go to trade school, but going to trade school is going to give you an edge. Yes, an education is only as good as you make it, though, right? You can go to the best school in the world and you can graduate with a D or a C. You can pass, but yet not retaining any of the information, okay? So you have to put into that education. You have to understand. You have to study, right? So I'm assuming that everybody out there is going to do what they have to do and going to get a proper education. So of course, I'm going to recommend any education you can have. Any education is better than no education, okay? So, but there's different things you need to be concerned about, right? You need to be worried about the trade school that you're going to. How much is it going to cost you? Different things like that. That's a whole nother topic, okay? But any education is better than no education, in my opinion, all right? All right, so how are the hours? It really depends on what niche you go into in HVAC, because HVAC has all different types of sides to it. Some of them you can work crazy hours. I operate a 24-hour business, right? It's an emergency business. I have to go to a customer's location at 2 in the morning because their walk-in freezer's down. That's what I do. That's the nature of my business, okay? Doesn't happen often, but you get into supermarkets, guaranteed you are working late nights, okay? It's gonna happen, right? So depends on what you want to do and where you want to go, right? You could definitely get good hours. How long does it take from the start of an apprenticeship and or schooling to be on your own in a service van? That really depends on you, okay? Depends on the service school that you choose and your aptitude, the amount of knowledge you can retain and therefore put out once you become a service technician. So I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I can tell you that you can go to a community college and take a 2-year program where you get a degree when you leave. So that's 2 years, but that doesn't mean you're a technician. That just means that you've taken classes and done the book work. Then you got to get your feet wet and hit the ground running and be an apprentice and work your way up. That's going to take time. All right. So it really depends on you and the company you go to work for. Let me get to the chat real quick and see what we got going on in here. You sell chillers and chiller accessories, Alaska. There you go. You're like Hank Hill. I sell propane and propane accessories. God damn it, Bobby! What the hell? All right, I'll probably get like a copyright strike for that, huh? Let's see. What was the most plugged up walk-in drain I have seen? It's hard to say the most plugged up drain. I mean, there's plugged up and not plugged up. That's kind of a very difficult question to answer. Let's see. Can I talk? No, we're not going to go there. All right. So have you ever made my own refrigeration system? I mean, I've built systems with different parts and kind of made different things. Yeah. But I've never like, made my own complete mad scientist system. No, not at all. Let me see. Let's see. I need to lick. Oh yeah, exactly. Let's see. All right, we're going to go down to the bottom and see what's going on in here. Yeah, please smash the thumbs up button, guys. It definitely helps out the stream. I already answered that question. Have I ever made... I already answered that question. All right, cool. I'm going to get to my list of things to talk about in here, okay? Let's see. I already answered that question. Cool. And I answered both of those. I want to talk about my brazing, guys, because I get a lot of comments that I don't know what I'm doing when I'm brazing. Guys, I am never going to claim to be the best person out there. I'm sure that someone can do it better than me. But when I do braze up a joint, it doesn't leak. Bottom line, okay? I probably use way too much solder. I've said it a million times. I don't fault anybody for using too much solder. I don't follow proper practices because I want to see that joint completely capped. I don't want to see any ridges or anything. When I braze a joint, it is brazed, okay? And if it has a drip coming off of it, so be it, okay? I don't necessarily aim for a drip coming off of every braze joint, but I put solder on there. I'm very aggressive with my solder, and I don't fault any of my guys for using too much solder either, okay? I mean, there's going to be a point. Yeah, if you have a joint that ends up being this big on a 3/8 inch line, of course, that's stupid, okay? But Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I am not perfect whatsoever. I've never even been to brazing school. I just turned them on and started figuring it out. So I'm sure I'm doing all kinds of things wrong. Okay. In my recent video too, I made sure I left in the point at which when I was brazing the dryer, when the dryer fell. That happens. And that was my fault for not propping it and securing it properly, but that does happen and it can be very frustrating. And I want to talk about something. So sometimes we do things out of instinct in our heads. And I'm going to tell you a story. This was not me. This was my dad. I've told this before, but this is one of those things where he reacted out of instinct, okay? When you're an HVAC service technician, I try to train people to learn how not to react, okay? Because sometimes you do things out of instinct that can hurt you badly. I'm going to give you an example of why you shouldn't react to something. Let's say you're brazing. Worst case scenario, you're brazing on a system. No, let's not even do that. Let's say you're working on an air conditioner and it's operating because you don't want to shut it off for whatever reason and you need to put your service gauges on it, right? And there's a condenser fan motor running 12 inches above your head and you got to reach your hand in here. And let's say that you accidentally touch a discharge line. It's in the middle of the summer. It's 120 degrees outside and you have a discharge line and you rub your hand across it. It's 230 degrees, right? System's not operating too well because that discharge line's really hot, but 230 degrees, your arm touches it. Oh man, damn it. You freak out and you slam your hand up into the condenser fan blade that's operating and your freaking finger gets all cut up. Okay. That is a time that you have to learn how not to react. I have refrigeration burns. If I get out of the shower and you look at my arms, you can see burn mark after burn mark from discharge lines. That's part of the reason why I wear long sleeve shirts now. Okay. It happens. You have to learn how not to react so that way you don't hurt yourself, okay? So I'm going to give you a story of something that I do know that happened. My dad many years ago, many years ago, was brazing. I think it was before I even technically worked for him. He was brazing some copper lines, and he didn't have the lines supported properly, okay? And he's brazing up above his head and doing what he has to do, heating it up. I think it was like a 7/8 inch suction line. He's heating it up, and then all of a sudden the bottom fitting fell, and the whole copper pipe fell down. And out of instinct, he didn't even mean to do it. He reached his hand out and he caught the copper pipe with his hand. Well, that copper pipe was probably, 1,300, 1,800 degrees, something stupid, right? And he caught it with his bare hand, right? And burnt the crap out of his hand. Now, I'm going to tell you something about a business owner. At the time, my dad had no employees because I remember this. He had to go to the ER. He had to get his whole hand all bandaged up because he had horrible burns on his hand and all that different stuff. And guess what? He had to go to work after the ER visit because he had to finish what he was doing because it was a refrigeration system and he had to get it operating. See, that's one thing that people don't think about, when you have a business and you're working on critical equipment. You don't just get to say, oh, I hurt my hand, I can't work here anymore. No, I mean, that or you got to figure something out because they need that equipment running. So he had to go back to work and he had to work and his hand took forever to heal because he had to work with it. That's the life of a business owner, right? But he made a mistake and he acted out of instinct. And sometimes your instincts can hurt you, right? He reacted and grabbed that pipe as it was falling because it's natural for us to try to catch things when they fall, and he burnt the crap out of his hand. That's a thing that you need to learn how not to react and let certain things happen. I learned from his mistake and I trained my brain not to react. So when that copper pipe fell, I knew, oh, you know what? There's nothing I can do. It's falling. I'll have to deal with the ramifications of it. And the dryer fell and I was able to fix it and all was good. But as technicians, we have to learn how not to react. Okay. Let's see. Angel says he's working on his first R290 unit this week. Any tips other than not blowing up? It's really not that bad, bud. Just follow proper refrigeration practices. Cut as many components out of the system as possible, but that's not always practical. I've said it many times in my R290 videos. Sometimes I do have to unsweat a fitting. Sweep the system with nitrogen. Make sure you have some solenoid valve magnets. If the system has solenoids, put those magnets on it with the system unplugged. That way the solenoid valves are open, and purge with nitrogen while you're doing everything. That way there's nitrogen flowing through, so there's less chance of combustion happening. Okay. All right. What is my opinion of a heat pump heating? I don't know what you mean by that, Anon. Let's see. You're working on your... I already answered that question. Let's see what else I'm missing. Can I explain why do I use 56% silver solder on dissimilar metal like brass to copper? So anytime I braze with two types or three types of solder. I braze with two types, okay? 15% Silphos, and then I use 56% silver solder, okay? 15% Silphos has 15% silver in it, a little bit of phosphorus in it. It has a fluxing agent in it, the brazing rods, so you don't have to add any flux to it, okay? The fluxing agent helps to clean the pipe. Silphos, 15% is what I use, works on copper to copper connections, okay? If you're doing any dissimilar metals, two metals that are different, copper to brass, copper to steel, steel to, well, even steel to steel, steel to brass, different things like that, dissimilar metals, you typically have to use a high silver content solder. Now, there's different levels of silver solder. Some people use 45%. I've always used 56%. But with 56% silver solder, it's literally 56% silver. You have to use a fluxing agent. The fluxing agent helps the solder to have a clean surface. That way it can properly bond. So anytime you have dissimilar metals, you need to use a high silver bearing solder. Okay, so I use 56%. Now, I know a lot of people out there say that they use, different ones. Alex Karst, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is amazing. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for the support. Every little bit helps. Okay, thanks, bud. Alex, different Alex, had actually asked, maybe it was him or someone else, asked in the comments, why is it that I'm always working on systems that don't have properly operating economizers? Why are economizers on air conditioners always bypassed? Okay, what is an economizer? An economizer is a mechanical device that allows you to conserve energy. Okay, I say conserve because there's new methods to using economizers. You can use an economizer on a water-cooled system. You can use economizers on air-cooled or DX systems. Okay, we're going to talk about the air-cooled system. So I have a restaurant that needs air conditioning, right? But guess what? It's nice outside. It's 55 degrees, 65 degrees, and the humidity levels are good. But the building's hot because it's full of people and they have to run the air conditioning. Well, what if we don't have to use the energy of the compressor and we can use the outdoor air? If the outdoor air is suitable, if the humidity is right, the air quality is right, we can actually open up a damper on the system and we can bring in outside air. We call it free cooling. Okay, it's really not that free, but we call it free cooling because then the compressor doesn't have to run. Now, I say they conserve energy because some of the newer systems, we can actually set them up to operate a compressor while it's using outside air too, okay? So you can do that kind of stuff. But why is it that economizers are always bypassed and what I'm working on? Well, oftentimes customers do not see the return on investment. So an economizer is a government mandated, especially in California, government mandated energy saving device that customers have to have on package units that have they're 5 tons or bigger, basically, or 2,000 CFMs of air or whatever. We have to have an economizer on a package unit. We have to have the ability to bring outside air, and they're supposed to be functioning too, okay? But what happens is when economizers fail, well, first off, what does an economizer do? It brings in outside air. Sometimes that air can be humid. It can be acidic. There's different things in the air. There's pollution and different stuff like that. And it eats away at the components of the economizer. It's not very favorable, okay? So we bring in nasty air sometimes, and it can ruin actuators. It can break dampers. It can ruin sensors. That's like the #1 failure on an economizer is sensor failure, okay? And most of the time, the customers do not feel that the return on investment is there. So they typically don't want to repair economizers when they fail, and they just want you to bypass them because it's going to cost them to replace the economizer because a lot of the times the components aren't replaceable. It's just time to replace the whole thing, okay, because the cost effectiveness of it. So to put in a new economizer on a 5-ton packaging unit might cost the customer $2,500 for a whole economizer assembly. Well, they start doing the math and they're like, well, this system's only 5 years old. We paid the $2,500 when we bought the system, and now 5 years later, and then they start doing the math going, did I really save $2,500 in energy? Well, they start doing the math and they're like, no. So why are they going to spend that much money to save energy when they're not saving that much money? It's ending up costing them more money. So majority of the time, the customers don't want to repair them and they have us bypass them. That's the bottom, plain and simple truth to it. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in here. I already talked about that. When I'm recovering refrigerant, how come sometimes I'll show in my videos that I have a scale under the cylinder, but then other times I won't? Okay. Why is it? Well, it just depends. Sometimes I said I'm lazy and I didn't want to bring my scale onto the roof. So I weighed the refrigerant cylinder downstairs if I'm charging, right? Or sometimes I know for a fact that there's no possible way the system I'm working on can hold more refrigerant than what can safely go into the recovery cylinder. Therefore, and maybe I'm changing a compressor and I'm going to replace the refrigerant. Therefore, I'm not really going to worry about, because the refrigerant's empty. The important thing to understand, when you're recovering refrigerant, you never want to overfill the cylinder you're moving the refrigerant into, okay? Because that can be a safety issue. That can be a catastrophic failure. You can have an explosion of that tank if it gets overfilled and safety pressure relief devices aren't working. It would have to be a perfect storm. So you never want to overfill a recovery cylinder, okay? But essentially, why is it that I don't always bring a scale up? Because I'm being lazy. That's the bottom, plain and simple truth, okay? I'm making an assumption majority of the time saying there's no way this system's going to have more refrigerant than what can fill in this cylinder. So I'm not going to bring my scale up onto the roof, okay? So that's majority of the time why you don't see me using a scale. But there's times where I know I have to weigh the refrigerant in. Of course I'm going to use a scale, okay? So that's why on that. Let's see what else I'm missing in the chat here. Let's see. Supermarket, you can work as much as you want. Single man's game. That is definitely true. That's Brett with Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. So yeah, on the supermarket side, you pretty much have unlimited hours. Okay. You can work yourself to death if you want to. You can, be cautious. No matter what you do in this trade, it is if you have a family, your family needs to be part of your decision-making processes, okay? So, your significant other, your wife, your husband, whatever it is, or maybe they don't want to be identified as a gender. Maybe they're like a it or a they or a them or a what. I don't know what the hell you say about that stuff. But anyways, more power to you if you are, okay? You need to communicate with your significant other. You need to be in communication. There's a common joke that refrigeration and air conditioning has a high divorce rate. And while I'm sure there's some truth to that, really what the problem is, it's not refrigeration and air conditioning, it's communication, okay? Majority of our problems when it comes to divorce come down to communication. You start looking at the statistics and different things why things fail. It's people not communicating, people not talking about their feelings, not sharing things, okay? So your significant other needs to understand what's going to happen if you go into refrigeration, whether it be the light commercial stuff that I do, where you might hit 50, 60 hours a week, or going into the supermarket side where you might hit 80 ridiculous amount of hours a week, okay? So it's all about communication. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody getting into air conditioning and refrigeration is it's about communication. My wife understands the game. We've been dating since we were kids, right? She was a sophomore, I was a junior in high school when we started dating, right? So she's only known refrigeration and air conditioning, but we communicate, right? So little things that we do together. We actually talk about this stuff. If you guys haven't already seen our HVACR Life series, go to my YouTube channel. You can look in the playlist, look at how we live the HVACR life. There's like 5 episodes that we did where we talk about all this stuff. You can even just search how we live the HVACR life in the search bar on YouTube, and you'll find it too. There's 5 videos. We actually recorded another one, but I haven't edited it yet. But we talk about that stuff. We talk about the issues that we have and the things that we do to make this work. And the biggest thing that I do, because I never know when I'm going to be home. I never know. It's just crazy, right? But I communicate with my wife. When I'm driving from call to call, I call my wife. Hey, how you doing? I'm driving to work. We try to communicate. I let her know my day is going to be long, different things like that. If I go to work and I don't call my wife till I get home 12 hours later, we're probably going to have a problem. I have done that, but it's usually because we're super busy and my wife understands. But if I did that every day, day in and day out, not communicating with my spouse or my significant other, that's on me. Right? And we as people need to communicate. We need to talk. There's things we can do. So I'm not going to blame the divorce rate on refrigeration and air conditioning. I'm going to blame it on a lack of communication, right? That's the biggest issue in my opinion, but I am not a psychiatrist, therapist, whatever that crap is. So, all right, let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. Does it matter how hot a reclaim bottle gets? Will it blow if it's not full but warm? Okay, so refrigerant cylinders, of course you could melt a cylinder, but you're not going to melt it with refrigerant, okay? So I'm going to say no. To answer your question, no, you're not going to get it too hot, but something you need to understand is refrigerant has a pressure-temperature relationship, okay? So for a refrigerant to be a certain temperature means that it's a certain pressure, and then you can run into a problem, okay? Because a vessel can only hold so much refrigerant safely. And at some point, you put too much refrigerant in it. Refrigerant, that's the definition of a refrigerant is a substance that can change states, right? So you have liquid and vapor states, right? And as it changes between the two, things happen. So as refrigerant heats up, the pressure goes up, okay? And yes, if it gets so hot that the pressure in the cylinder exceeds the safety bypass pressure, safety relief pressure, then something bad is going to happen. And you're hoping that the pressure relief device, because all refrigerant cylinders that are DOT approved and all this fancy mumbo jumbos have a pressure relief device of some sort on them, and that pressure relief device will blow. Okay, it'll pop. It's a soft plug or something in the system, because if it doesn't blow, then you're going to have a catastrophic explosion and you're going to get shrapnel blowing everywhere and people could get killed. Okay, so they have pressure relief devices. So could a refrigerant cylinder have too much pressure in it? Yes, and something bad will happen. You're hoping that it's a pressure relief that'll happen, okay? But could a refrigerant cylinder simply be too hot? Not necessarily, okay? I mean, unless you damn melted the damn cylinder, but that's not going to happen with refrigerant in it, okay? The thing will blow apart before it melts. Hopefully that answers your question for you, bud. Okay. Dude, there's so much going on in the chat right now. I can't keep up with it, so I'm sorry if I'm not getting to all your guys' questions and stuff. This is a busy stream right now. But please, guys, we have 316 people watching at the moment and 237 likes. Smash the like button, guys. It definitely helps out the stream, okay? All right. In my opinion, and this is something that I talk about all the different times, okay? Guys, every different situation is going to require different parts, okay? Of course, I have certain parts that I like to use on a regular basis, but the conditions at the customer's location, the availability of parts and different things like that are going to determine what I use, right? So defrost clocks. Oh my gosh, there is so much of an uproar about the defrost clocks that I use in my videos. How come I use a Paragon? Paragons suck. How come I use a Graslin? Graslin sucks. Everything should be KE2 controllers. Everything should be a A419 controller. Everything should be a Dixel controller. La da 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 da. Guys, every situation is going to call for something different, okay? I am more of a fan of Graslin defrost clocks because the ability to add multiple defrosts throughout the day, right? And to change the defrost durations. Digital clocks are nice, right? You have Paragon has a digital one. You can use a KE2 temp plus defrost controller. You can go full. We're not going to go there, but you can go full. I was going to do a movie quote there from Tropic Thunder, but you guys can say it in the chat right now. But that's one of my favorite movies, by the way, Tropic Thunder with Ben Stiller, Robert Downey Jr. That movie's just so freaking hilarious. But anyways, you never go full, you know, but you can go crazy with your defrost stuff, right? If you go to the KE2 Evap efficiency controller, that thing has the capabilities to launch the damn space shuttle, okay? There's all kinds of other controllers. You know, you get into the supermarket stuff, you can go the rack controllers, all kinds of different things, right? Every situation is going to call for something different. With what I work on, one of my favorite clocks to use is a Graslin clock, okay? But there's issues with the Graslin clocks because they're very susceptible to dust and dirt buildup in the clock. If you use a Paragon, it can handle a lot more dust and it's really not going to go bad, okay? So if it's mounted outside, I'm going to be a little reluctant to use a Graslin clock because they get gummed up with sand and they have a high failure rate. But the cool thing about the Graslin clocks is the ability to do long defrost in the middle of the night, short defrost during the day, okay? You can also do that with the Paragon digitals and different ones, but every situation calls for something different, and I'm not partial to just one, okay? I will use different ones in different situations. Today I was just working on an evaporator that I put a KE2 Ketatherm temp plus defrost controller in it, okay? 7 months ago, and we had an ice up situation. Those are good, those are bad. They have goods and bads to everything, okay? All right. You know, a lot of the issues that we deal with, refrigeration, air conditioning, electrical, have to do with lack of proper preventative maintenance, right? Customers cut that out of the picture. things start going bad. A lot of the issues, all right? When I was just talking to my buddy Brett on the phone before this, I kind of talked about it earlier. Again, Brett's with the Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. You guys need to go find that on your social media platforms, the podcast apps. Him and Kevin Compass do a great podcast. It's the supermarket side. It's really cool. Okay, so definitely check it out. But Brett and I were just talking about compressors, how they're murdered, right? Compressors typically don't just go bad on their own. Of course, you're going to have a weird fluke failure where a compressor does fail on its own. But majority of the time, they're murdered. Something caused the compressor to go bad. The same can be said for most issues within HVACR. How come the air conditioner is overheating? Well, because someone's not cleaning the condenser. That's someone's fault, right? Inevitably, someone made a decision to not clean it. Whether it was from ignorance or just pure, they needed to save money. They took a gamble, they made the decision, and now we're here. The system's overheating, and we need to clean the condenser. But it's not just as simple as that. What happens when a system overheats? Well, compressors have refrigerant oil in them. The oil gets really hot. That oil can start to pick up things off the sides of the walls. You can start to get crap building up in the compressor. The oil can actually go bad if it gets too hot. It can overheat and change its properties and become a giant sludge fest and start plugging up everything in the system. Most commonly on restaurant refrigeration in the mid to the late 90s, R134A was the refrigerant flavor of choice when it came to reach-in refrigerators. And guess what? Capillary tubes were the metering device of choice. And everybody says R134A sucks because it plugs up the cap tubes. No. R134A has nothing to do with why the cap tubes plug up. It has to do with the polyester oil and the way it reacts with the 134A when a system is overheated. Why does it overheat? Because people aren't doing proper preventative maintenance, okay? Oil's overheating because either it wasn't designed right or the system isn't being cleaned right. Therefore, it's operating with higher condensing temps and it's breaking down the oil. And then a reaction happens with the refrigerant and it starts to plug up the capillary tubes. So it's not necessarily just the 134A that's the problem. It's the lack of maintenance that's the problem, or the lack of proper practices, pulling evacuations and different things like that. So majority of our problems come from people not properly maintaining equipment. Sometimes I understand it, because if you maintained an equipment, as much as, absolutely did all the maintenance in the world on that equipment, every time you open it up to check the pressures and do all this different stuff, you're going to lose a little bit of refrigerant. So there's ramifications to preventative maintenance too. Okay. You're opening and closing doors, you're adjusting belt tensions, you're doing all kinds of different things. There's ramifications of that. You're hosing off the condenser every week. Well, calcium buildup. There's going to be ramifications. So you're having to find a balance there. Also considering the customers have budgets and different things like that. But preventative maintenance can prevent majority of our problems for sure. Okay. Just got to figure out the right interval and what's best for the customer. I already answered that question. Done. Already answered that question. Done. We're knocking these out of the park. I already said that. That's cool. Cameron at the beginning of the stream asked me if I would talk about my opinion on UV lights and indoor air quality devices. Okay, first and foremost, I'm probably not the right person to ask about indoor air quality devices because I really don't believe in majority of them. Okay, they're voodoo. Excuse me, pardon my French. That was rude. They're really voodoo magic to me. Okay, I shouldn't say pardon my French. I burped. That wasn't French. That was just plain being a rude butthead. But I don't understand indoor air quality devices, okay? It's hard for me to wrap my head around it. Refrigerants, I understand what happens. I understand the chemical process and the reactions and the temperatures and different things. Electrical, I can understand it. I can measure it. It's something that I can see. Indoor air quality, that's voodoo magic to me. I don't get it. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a good thing, that indoor air quality devices aren't good, but I also have my opinions about how people are installing certain indoor air quality devices. Even if I don't fully understand the indoor air quality devices, I know that the manufacturers actually have stipulations on how their stuff is installed and what they claim it can actually do. And majority of the time, when people sell indoor air quality devices, they're not even installing them according to the manufacturers correctly. They're not even pointing them at the things they're supposed to do, okay? I will tell you that using the concept of a UV light, If you were using a UV light to sanitize the air, the amount of UV lights, an array that you would have to have in the ductwork would be insane to properly sanitize the air at, even on a 5-ton system, at 2,000 CFMs of air moving across that UV light. Just simply sticking in a UV light on the side of the residential split system right in the side, that isn't going to do crap for 5,000 or 2,000 CFMs of air, okay? Now, pointing a UV light at an evaporator coil that has bacterial growth on it, I can see benefits to that, but I can also see downsides to that. UV lights, depending on what types they are, can be harmful to plastics and different things like that. You've got new UVC and different things like that, but still, a lot of the indoor air quality devices are not properly understood. They're not properly installed. So my opinion, I don't really do them. I do have an indoor air quality device that I installed on a customer's location and they had me take out. It's one of those ionizers, bipolar ionizers. And I installed it at my house and I don't notice anything. I don't even think it's doing anything. I don't know. It's kind of cool though, because you can play with it. You can touch it and make a little lightning bolt go from your fingers. If you turn the lights off, you can go bzz, bzz, bzz. You can play with it. I mean, I don't know. That's the only thing I can see it doing. Now, there's some things that prove that it's doing something, because you take that bipolar ionizer. I put one in my office and I left it in here for a week and shut the door and kept the door shut. And I walked in my office and it smells like bleach. Well, my understanding, the fact that it smells like bleach means that it's creating ozone, right? But it's ironic because on the bipolar ionizer's instructions, it says it does not produce ozone. But I'm intrigued because then why does it smell like bleach in my office when I have it plugged in for long periods of time? I don't know. I don't understand this stuff. Okay. So I'm sure there's much smarter people than I that can explain proper IAQ products. I'm just not that smart with it. Okay. All right. Let me see. How often have I come across expansion valve maxed all the way out? I don't know, maybe 2-3 times in my career. Not that much. Let me see. Oh, that is funny. Frost HVAC said French people are rude, though. That's funny. It's the Super Tech before me that is the problem. I'm assuming with the indoor air quality. Where's the best place to find parts for an Italian-made gelato case in Italy? I was like trying to say Italy, but I was like Italia. No, Italy. That's the best place to find it. Everything's going to be pushed over here. I already answered that question. Yeah, if you guys have questions that I'm not covering, put them in caps lock, guys, because I'm paying attention to the chat now because I ran through all my topics. So I'll give it a few minutes looking at the chat. So throw it in there and I'll try to knock it out. What are my thoughts on residential light commercial zoning control? Hey, Dave, you know what? I honestly never worked with zoning control, never installed them myself. Cool concept if you install them right and have the right setups, right? I can think in my head how a zoning system can be horrible, though, because what happens if you have a zoning system installed and your system needs to have a certain amount of airflow? When you start closing off zones, you're affecting the rest of the airflow for the entire system. So in my opinion, if you're going to do a zoning system, right, and this isn't practical, you need to have a variable capacity compressor and you need to have variable capacity airflow for a zoning system properly. So then you could shut off a room, shut off an area, but then the airflow is going to be adjusted accordingly. So that way you're still moving air across your system, right? Now, there's companies out there, I'm not going to name brands, but there's companies out there that make variable capacity systems, right, that are not communicating. It's just a condenser you buy and it regulates the suction saturation temperature, the suction line, all that good stuff, right? That'll work in some areas, but in high humidity areas, it's not going to be the greatest thing in the world. And there's a lot of complaints about high humidity areas because it's just not quite working the way that they wanted it to. But you install those systems out in California, that's not zoning, but that's just variable capacity. I'm going off on a tangent right now. But you install them in California, they'll probably work fine because we don't know what humidity is here. But so, all right, let's see what else. I don't know. Use a barometric bypass damper in a zoning system. Okay. Charleston upright cooler dryer relocation tips. Factory dryer is welded between the wall and the condenser. I mean, just put it on the liquid line, man. You know, you can move the liquid line wherever you want it to, as long as you don't create issues with restrictions or traps or anything like that. If I know what you're talking about, I've worked on those before and they're a nightmare to change. So move it. Take that liquid line coming out of the condenser, take it on top of the condenser, put it up there, and then repipe the liquid line back to the TXV. Problem solved. I've done that. As an owner of a company, why am I on call so much? Adrian, because I don't have enough employees and I don't want to overwork the existing employees I have. So right now I only have one other service technician that's on call. I have a 5-week rotation because in the past I had 5 employees that were on call. So I kept that 5-week rotation because I didn't want people to get burnt out. So once I started, employees left, different things like that. After, we lost employees, but then we never hired back up to that 5-person staff because we just didn't have the work to do it anymore. But I still keep the 5-week rotation. So right now I'm on call 4 weeks in a row. We're currently changing some up because I'm going to put my apprentice into the on-call rotation, but I'm still on call with him. But I just take it because I don't want to burden my employees and burn them out because, I can handle more of a workload than they can, but it does stress me out a bit and I'm working on it. I'm training an apprentice. Once he's ready, we'll get him into the on-call rotation and then I'll work on hiring someone new and move on. As the winter time comes, my other employee told me he wants the hours, so he wants to take another on-call. So I'm fine with that. I just don't want him to get overloaded. We also do our on-call differently here. I've talked about it before, but we do a rotating schedule. So you're never on call the same days every week. And every technician, so this is how it works. One person is on call for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then every technician gets one of the other days in a week, right? Because we're a small company. So, and you're never on call for the same days. So if you're on call for the weekend, you don't have any of the weekdays. So we don't do a full week on call. Right? And we do a rotating schedule. So if you're on call Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the next week you're automatically on call Thursday. And then the week after that, you're on call Wednesday, then Tuesday, then Monday, and then you're on call for the weekend. And it just rotates with every service technician. And we do that way they just don't get burnt out, because in the past we used to work 50, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, and everybody just got burnt out because you'd work all week long with everybody and then you'd be on call for the whole week and it just killed everybody. So we do that rotating schedule. Does my dad go out anymore? No. Every once in a blue moon, he'll come out and handle or help me on installs and big construction jobs. If we're doing a crane lift or something like that, he'll come out and help, take pallets off and do the little stuff. But he doesn't hold tools anymore. He doesn't turn wrenches anymore. Doesn't do much of anything anymore when it comes to the service side. But my dad still works in the office full time. So it's good though, because if my dad and I were working together every single day, we'd be punching each other in the face. So, all right. Do I work on residential? No, just light commercial refrigeration and air conditioning for restaurants. So, did I say I was building a computer? If so, what are the specs of the parts I am using? Cyborg Sheep. You need to go to the Discord server, bud. The specs are insane. I went nuts on the computer. Absolutely nuts. What I did. I had a budget and I took that budget and I maximized everything. And then honestly, my buddy Ike was helping me to pick everything. I went past my budget and I was like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and go with that bigger processor and this. So we went nuts. I know we have a 32 core processor. We have a crap ton of RAM. I'm also working on we're going to get me a RAID system for hard drives too, because editing these videos, I'm editing in 4K. On average, my biggest videos are 40 gigs, sometimes 50 gigs. Normal videos are 20 to 30 gigs. So I save all the raw footage and all the video footage. So I need a lot of server space. I currently have a 5 terabyte external drive, which is not the greatest in the world to use. And I'm like within 20% of being maxed out on that drive. And that I've only been doing 4K for maybe a year or that. So the 4K is when it really started filling up because you have a lot of footage and different stuff. So yeah, I'm seriously upgrading. And I was on the phone with my buddy Ike and we were kind of going through things and I was just editing a basic video, not even a hard one. And when I was rendering that video, my CPU was maxed out at 100%. Like it's just killing it. And I also want to change my editing program to Adobe Premiere Pro because right now I'm using a dumbed down version of it. And I think I need to move to Adobe Premiere Pro, which means I'm going to be editing and using more processing power and different things. So we definitely need more computers. So we went nuts with it. So I'll probably share some information. Hopefully I'll be building it this weekend. So we'll see. We'll see the specs and all that good stuff. Have I done any work on chillers for liquid cooled servers or server room AC? No, I don't. I don't do any chiller work or anything like that. So you can feel free to, I don't know if you have the ability to post the specs in there. I'm just not capable of doing that right now. I don't think I can. Hold on. I think I could do it. Hold on. I know how to do this. I'll post the specs right now. Please don't screw things up. Please don't screw things up. I'll post this in there right now. Wink HVAC, thank you very much for that super chat. Hello, bud. Right on. Hello from California. Wink says he's from Connecticut. So let me go into here. And let me go into here. I'm going to the Discord server right now. Again, I posted the link to the Discord server earlier. And let me find my specs for the computer. Let me try to find them from up here. Hold on, I'm almost there. And I'll post them in here because I went freaking crazy with it. So 1 second, almost there. That's my old computer. And this is my new computer. I'm almost to the specs right now. There we go. All right, hold on just a second. I will post it in here right now. This is only going to make sense for computer people. It's freaking crazy. I don't even know if let's see if that even comes. Oh, no, it's too many characters. I can't even post it in here. Nope, not going to happen. Yeah, no, not going to happen. So you guys will have to go to the Discord server or something. I can't post it in here. It's too much. So, all right. Use Bluebeam PDF review instead of Adobe Pro. Oh, okay, got you. How did I start my own business? Has finances ever affected my workload? Yeah, so to be fair, I did not start this business. I've taken over the business from my father. He started the business in 1989, 90, something like that. And I became partners with him about 10 years ago, and we run the business together now. So I didn't start it. A lot of our customers had been his customers, and they've been legacy customers from the beginning. We still have a customer that was one of our very first customers ever, and they're one of our biggest customers now. And it's all about how you treat the customer. Let's see what else we got going on here. It's going to make sense. Oh, yeah. Yeah, posted on Discord with my credit card information. There you go. Ike's posting it right now. So there's the specs. Yeah, we went a bit crazy with the computer. So for those that know anything about computers, it's going to make total sense because it's freaking nuts. Oh, right on. BLH says, thanks for the discount code for TrueTech Tools. If you guys don't already know, I have an offer code with TrueTechTools.com. If you use that offer code, you get an 8% discount. I get a small commission. It's a great way to support the channel, and you get tools at a discounted rate. So the discount code is big picture, one word. All right. Did I buy into the business, or is my dad just super generous? No, I did not buy into the business. I earned the business, if that makes sense. So, because I am the business now. My dad is not, everything's changed to the point that he's not even capable. So the business, again, I'm not flexing or anything. Don't take this the wrong way, but the business is what it is because of me. So therefore, you know, as he retires and moves on, I'm sure I'll pay him a salary and stuff after he retires and all that good stuff. We haven't figured all that out yet, but yes, it is my business. So, let me see. What is super about superheat? I don't know. All right. Don't use. All right, cool. Let's see. Do I sell shirts or hats? Yeah, I do sell shirts and hats on, hvacrvideos.com. So, let's see. Right on. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, guys, because it is time for me to go. I've been on here for almost 2 hours. I really appreciate you guys making it to the end of the video. We are going to cue up the outro music here in just a second, and we will catch you on the next one. You're supposed to leave. You're not supposed to be here anymore. Yeah. No, you need to go. I don't care where you go. Just got to get the hell out of my stream. Because I'm about to hit the end button and you're going to be banished until next week. So y'all are going to have to figure that out. Yeah. I really got nothing else for you. You know, it's just one of those things. You're going to have to move on. Yeah. Someone said I should do more Hank Hill. I don't like doing impersonations. I can only do like one or two. I have some really creepy voices and stuff that I do that I drive my family nuts with, but it's not really the place or time for it. So, yeah, I've never been a person about impressions. I think Hank Hill is probably one of the only ones I can do. And sometimes I can work on a voice, but it takes me a while to get there. And then it hurts my throat really bad too, because what I have to do to like do a voice, like, but sometimes I have like voices that I like mess with my kids with and different creepy guys with and stuff like that. But I have to keep playing with it to like get my vocal cords to do what I want them to do. And then I could talk that way forever. But then it's weird because it takes me a while of playing with different voices to get back to that point, if that makes sense. Some really, really creepy ones. So let me see. What am I missing in here? Let's see. This is your home now? No, man, you need to go to your own home, right? Are you too good for your home? Put some peanut butter. Alaska. Oh, man. Oh, if you guys missed the beginning of the stream, I had my dog Luke in here, and my wife had the brilliant idea to fill his Kong with warm peanut butter, right? So it's just like really runny. And I walk into the living room and she is laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing about? And I look at the dog and he's covered in peanut butter because it's warm and he's licking it out. It's getting everywhere and it's on his paws and his arm and it's all over the blanket. And I'm like, why would you put warm peanut butter in the freaking Kong? Like, and when I say warm, it just came out of the cabinet because it was a brand new jar. I was like, you only put cold stuff because then he has to work for it and it's thick. And I picked up the dog, go back to the beginning of the stream, and I was holding him and he smells like peanut butter and I'm covered in peanut butter and it was just a mess. Oh, man, dogs are dumb, right? But they're our best friends in the world. His name's Luke, and he's a really, really cool dog. He's a silver lab. Awesome little dude. He's really, really neat. So I'll have to go find the puppy. Let me see if I can grab him. I'll bring him in. Hold on. Let me cue up some outro music, and then I'll be back. Give me a second. Here we go. Ready? So this is my little puppy right here. This is Luke. What's up, buddy? Oh, yeah. He likes to eat everything. And he still smells like peanut butter, by the way. So he is 9 weeks old. So he's a little guy. But he's going to be a big guy for sure because I want to say the breeder said his dad was like 90 pounds and his mom's like 70 or 80 pounds. So he's going to be a big boy when he grows up. So, and he was the second biggest of the litter. So the biggest was already taken. So he's super chill right now, but yeah, he's a cute little guy. He's a silver Labrador retriever. So pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, he's awesome. Little guy. Super, super cool. He's a pain in the butt, but he's awesome. So, all right. Well, I'm going to cue this up and I'm going to leave for real. We're not going to do the outro music again. Really appreciate you guys. And thanks so much for all the support. I really appreciate it every day, all the emails and comments and everything you guys